really where we're going now is we're going to have to build our own parallel society, our own parallel economy in order to exist in this country.
In the 5th century, St. Augustine wrote about the city of God versus the city of man. This is precisely the divide we're seeing today around the world, and especially here in America. St. James tells us in sacred scripture, "Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God." St. James was warning us about the city of man, which is the earthly city created by self-love and contempt for God. The alternate society, on the other hand, is the city of God. This is the heavenly city, created by contempt of self and love of God, as St. Augustine explains. Every day that goes by, the split in America is more and more visible. There are those who promote and embrace the evil, there are those who resist it, and there are those who are indifferent and just don't care. Ultimately, this last group is also on the side of evil. Later in the show, we're going to have with us Gab founder and CEO Andrew Torba to talk all about this alternate society. But for now, here's our Mic'd Up report.
So no, America's not lost its religion, it's just replaced its religion. What's dying is the faith that created Western civilization, Christianity.
Feels like we don't recognize this country anymore. It does feel like there are a bunch of people that are making decisions and ruling over us every single day.
And it's time. Take these masks off of my child.
By our nature, we want to see each other. We need to see each other. Looking at another person's face is the beginning of connection. Eliminating that connection dehumanizes us.
What does it mean to be human? For the vast majority of history, most people had a fundamental understanding of this concept. Man originates from God and is destined to return to Him. God creates all that exists. He's the author of life, and this basic truth was understood by most, especially the Founding Fathers. It's why the Declaration of Independence, signed in 1776, recognizes the laws of nature and of nature's God, man's certain unalienable rights that are endowed by their Creator. It even appeals to the supreme judge of the world.
So man is a body-soul composite. He's meant to be both a body and a soul. They're not supposed to be separated. Death is a punishment for sin. That's the separation of the body and the soul. But it's not supposed to be that way. And they will be separated for a time, but of course we believe in the resurrection of the dead because they have to be reunited, because that is what man is. He is a body-soul composite. He has one foot on earth with the animals, and he has his mind and his heart and his intellect in heaven with the angels. So he literally unites the spiritual and the physical in his person. So that's what man is with his supernatural end.
Human beings have intellects and wills. Intellects for knowing truth, and wills for choosing the good. By nature, human beings are also social creatures. It's why societies exist. The purpose of society is the perfection of man, directing him to the knowledge of truth and ordering him to good actions. This is also known as the common good, which the Catechism of the Catholic Church defines as the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as groups or as individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. This is in keeping with the wider tradition. St. Thomas Aquinas says, there are 5 obligations of authority. The first obligation is to express the purpose and order of the community. The second is to ensure each member pursues the good. The third is to make just laws. The fourth obligation of authority is to make sure the laws are followed. And the fifth obligation is to reward lawful actions and punish unlawful ones.
Peter, in the Acts of the Apostles, I believe it's chapter 5, says when they, basically the Sanhedrin, which was an authority, told them, stop preaching this Jesus that you keep preaching, he said, it is better for us to obey God than man. So right there you see, well, you just gave me a law, a mandate, whatever, that contradicts God's own law, which is to preach the gospel to all nations. So, sorry, but we have to obey God on this one. We're just going to ignore you because it's not a just law.
The Church does not blend the individual into the collective like Marxism, nor does she focus solely on economic prosperity like liberal capitalism. Instead, Catholic social teaching correctly understands the human person as a body-soul composite on a pilgrimage to eternity. Most modern societies ignore spiritual realities. Thus, such societies likewise completely misunderstand the people they are supposed to be serving. A glaring example of this is the legalization of abortion, which most countries around the world have. This map, put together by the pro-abortion group Center for Reproductive Rights, illustrates this reality and identifies that 73 countries, including the United States, have legalized abortion on demand within the first 12 weeks. At this stage, the child can smile and make all facial expressions while having fully formed arms, hands, fingers, feet, and toes. In 13 countries, it's legal to kill the child on socioeconomic grounds, which falls under a broad range of circumstances, meaning for basically any reason. 51 countries have legalized abortion in the case of preserving the woman's mental health. This consists of her physical, mental, and social well-being. Again, meaning the woman can abort her child for basically any reason. Just 42 countries have legalized abortion only when the mother's life is at risk, and 24, just over 10% of countries, do not permit abortion under any circumstances. Another current example is the growing number of nations normalizing homosexuality. Around the world, 28 countries, again including the United States, have legalized so-called gay marriage. On top of the acceptance, normalization, and promotion of the evils of abortion and homosexuality, just to name a few, the United States government has also endorsed vaccine mandates.
We have plenty of opportunity to make sure we get everyone in the world to play our part, the largest part in the world, of getting everyone vaccinated.
At the top of the list for the White House's path out of the pandemic is vaccinating the unvaccinated. Currently, over 56% of the country has gotten the COVID shot, and the majority of Americans support vaccine mandates. According to Pew Research, 61% of American adults favor proof of vaccination for travel by airplane. 57% favor proof of vaccination to attend colleges and universities. 56% in regard to sporting events or concerts. 50% support proof of the COVID shot to eat inside restaurants. And 45% for shopping in stores and businesses. As the mandates slowly roll out across the country, most Americans are either showing support or simply indifference. But there's still a significant amount of resistance, and this is causing a sharp divide in society.
Don't be silent. Talk. Get out there, and every opportunity you have to speak, speak. And if they try to silence you, well, they didn't hear you, so speak louder. And just keep doing that, bombard with letters, all that stuff, because you have every right to be heard. And you have to be a part of that process. But I think ultimately what's going to change this is make sure you're also, and primarily, getting down on your knees in sackcloth and ashes and repenting and begging God to have mercy on you, your family, your friends, your enemies, and your country.
Up next is our interview with Andrew Torba. Torba describes himself as Christian, husband, father, and patriotic American. It's also fair to add tech guru to that list because he's the founder and CEO of Gab.com, a social media site that prides itself on free speech. Gab was created during the 2016 election as Torba noticed that other social media sites like Facebook and Twitter were actively pushing and promoting liberal Marxist views while censoring Christian conservative ones. In speaking about the founding of Gab, he told the Washington Post in 2016, quote, "I didn't set out to build a conservative social network by any means, but I felt that it was time for a conservative leader to step up and to provide a forum where anybody can come and speak freely without fear of censorship." Up next, our Church Militant interview with Andrew Torba.
As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen.
Voter fraud is real, and we need to examine the evidence and look at the actual facts.
A new devastating view of the deadly insurrection on January 6th. A bipartisan Senate report blaming intelligence and security.
And you see what's happening. They're being lost. They're being discarded. They're finding them in piles. It's going to be a catastrophe.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Mic'd Up, where we're talking about the big divide in the country and the split. And, of course, joining us now is Andrew Torba, founder and director and the head honcho of Gab. Welcome, first of all, Andrew. How are you? Good to have you back on.
I'm doing very well. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's talk about this great, big, huge divide the country is going through right now. And specifically, if you were to point to one single issue, the biggest difficulty facing America right now and, kind of causing the divide, what would you say that is?
I think the biggest problem is that we live in two separate, versions of reality. In one version of reality, we have concrete truth, which is, we know that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, and God is, we get our freedoms from God, we get our liberty from God, we get our laws, and everything comes from God. I think that's one side of the aisle. And the other side is just this nihilistic post-truth chaos, right? It's this world where in post-truth world, everything changes by the day. The science changes by the day. The facts change by the day. The authority sources change by the day. Who's in control changes by the day. And it's just utter chaos. So I think that's the great divide right now, is we're living really in two separate worlds, two separate realities, and really two separate countries, especially in America. We should let the audience know that we had to tell you to take your mask off to do the interview. Not true. I'm not masked. Question, how much is free speech? I mean, your hat obviously says everything right there, make speech free again. How much does the freedom of speech, First Amendment, play into this as far as the division? I mean, aren't both sides sort of in favor of free speech? Well, not so much anymore. I mean, I think it's also another one of the biggest issues right now facing this country is we see this Facebook whistleblower, quote unquote, come out the other day. And what does she say? She says that Facebook is not censoring enough, right? And this is, obviously a ploy to push for more censorship of American citizens. The technology companies, there's 2 or 3 of them that have control over the flow of information, over the flow of news, over the search results, over everything on the internet. And, when someone like me comes along and tries to actually compete, it turns out we don't only have to build our own social network. We have to build our own servers. We have to build our own payment processors. We have to build our own email services. We have to build our own e-commerce platform, right? Just to exist and just to operate on the internet. And we've done all of those things. But, really where we're going now is we're going to have to build our own parallel society, our own parallel economy in order to exist in this country, especially with the medical tyranny that we're seeing right now. People can't even express themselves on the internet with different political opinions that go against the American oligarch regime. But now they can't even hold a job if they're not going to inject themselves with this experimental substance, which is absolutely insane. And religious liberty is being trampled on as well. Religious exemptions are being denied, and people are having to drop out of school. They're having to find another job. They're having to leave the military. So, really, I think that this medical tyranny is actually a big attack on Christianity and a big attack on Christians in particular. It's trying to weed out Christians out of every facet of society, whether it's the military, whether it's the healthcare system, whether it's, the job market. And, what we're going to have to do as Christians, we don't have any other choice, is to build our own parallel society, our own parallel economy, where we lift up and prop up one another in the name of glorifying God. That's the only path forward that I see. So question on that, because it seems rather legitimate, but the other side would accuse you and others, of becoming so exclusionary that Jews wouldn't be welcome in that other society, parallel society. Hindus wouldn't, Buddhists wouldn't, atheists wouldn't, gay married couples wouldn't be, all that sort of thing. So what do you say to that? I don't think that's true at all. I think there's a lot of folks in those different communities that also see what's going on and maybe don't want the vaccination. I mean, the vaccination thing, the vaccination line in the sand isn't just, about, Christianity and non-Christians. There's a lot of people who maybe want to wait and see what the long-term side effects of this vaccination are. And they're from every race, every religion, every part of society, every creed. And people just don't want to submit to the tyranny. I don't believe that human beings, it's a human right. It's about bodily sovereignty. We shouldn't have to be forced to inject or put something in our body that we don't want to in order to hold employment. So it's not necessarily about the faith, although, the reason that I bring up Christianity is because, you see the New York Times and all the mainstream media
attacking Christians and in particular white Christians who are refusing to get the vaccination and kind of demonizing them for doing that. So I think that they know that that specific cohort is rejecting the vaccine in mass numbers, and that's why they're making these mandates to force them out of the military, to force them out of the healthcare system, to force them out of pretty much every job in every sector in media. Even Fox News is mandating these vaccines, right? So that's what I think the bigger agenda that's at play here. But everybody is welcome in this parallel economy, this parallel society. What we're trying to do is preserve a Christian American values that have existed in this country for hundreds of years. So, freedom of association is a part of that. Freedom of speech is a part of that. The free market is a part of that. That is the vision that we have here for this parallel society. It's not creating something new per se, but it's really preserving something that has been around for hundreds of years.
Let's talk about the immigration, I suppose you could say, within the United States of these two societies. I mean, if you have various small religious Christian-oriented communities that don't want to take part in any of this kind of craziness, not just the vaccine, but all of it, right. And yet they're in a blue state. Many of these people are now starting to pick up and move to what's considered a red state. Well, at some point down the road, and I'd like you to speculate on how soon you think it might be, but on some point down the road, you actually have two geographically distinct, not just political colors on a map of blue or red, but actual, this is like United States of America 1.0, and this is, if you can call it, United States of America 2.0 without a constitution. That would, different economies begin to grow out of that, and as a matter of fact, different economies begin to produce that as well. It's kind of back and forth. So what do you do about questions of, Delta Airlines, for example, which is one of the most woke companies in America, says, well, we're just not going to fly to a red state. We don't agree with them. Look, all these businesses, they pulled out of Georgia with the All-Star game and all of this stuff. So corporate America is very deeply involved in this.
Right.
Would the traditional Christian red state America have to now begin developing its own airlines, its own trucking industry, its own energy, everything? So you've really got two countries going on.
All of it. Yes, absolutely. I believe that's where we're going. We're seeing this natural balkanization of the United States. And I think that, the path forward is really states' rights. It's county over country. We have to stop focusing so much on national politics and on what's going on in Washington, D.C. We all get so wrapped up in this, and we forget what's going on in our own backyards. We can have an actual impact at our local school board meeting or at our local city council meeting. We could run for mayor. We could have a real impact in our own cities, in our own towns, in our own counties, and in our own states. That is how we're going to eventually take this country back, because right now it's really under foreign occupation. You have these globalists who are not believing in American values and Christian values. They have a different value set than us. They have a different worldview than us. They're anti-Christ to a T. So, as Christians here in this country, in a Christian country, in a historically Christian country, we have to start battening down the hatches and uniting together across the faith, by the way. And we're seeing this on Gab, right? We're seeing, Catholics and Orthodox and Protestants are setting aside our differences, and we're saying, wait a minute, we're under attack by global communism right now. So we need to come together and unite in Christ. That is what we share. Regardless of all the nuances between us, what we share is our love for Christ and our love of sharing the gospel. And they're coming after all of us. The enemy doesn't care if you're Catholic or if you're Orthodox or if you're Protestant. They care that you're a Christian and that you're proclaiming the name of Christ, and they're going to come after all of us eventually. So we have to unite together right now and stand up and start building. That's I believe, the path forward.
So let me ask you, in this new country, which is essentially what it would be, there would be United States of America. There just wouldn't be 50 of them. There'd be 30 or 27 or whatever it is. Sure. Would this country produce its own constitution, keep the old one, do some amendments to it? Because it was through the process of how the Constitution is laid out that the Marxists were able to actually take control, which is what they've done. So would we put in that Constitution 11th Amendment, for example, saying abortion absolutely illegal under all circumstances, contraception absolutely not, can't be sold, manufactured, transported, nothing? Would we kind of learn from the mistakes of the past and shore it up in the new America?
I think it's going to have to come down to the state constitution, right, and the state laws. And this is where, again, focusing on local power, right? Like we can get involved, Christians can get involved and should get involved in the local state legislatures and in, local government, and just start at your town, start at your city, right? Start small and then work your way up. And we can capture these state legislators, and that's how we're going to pass laws like what was just passed, the heartbeat bill in Texas, right? And the whole country is up in arms. But that's the path forward. Is we cannot rely on the federal government anymore. We have to rely on the state level, and we have to take control at the state level and at the county level and at the city level and at the township level if we're going to protect and preserve our value systems in our own backyard. Again, we may not be able to control what's going on at the federal level or in D.C. or across the whole country, but we can control what's going on in our own backyard and certainly in our own counties and certainly in our own states.
So do you see a situation where there are essentially two countries, but at the moment there is still one federal tax code? And so would the states start rebelling and saying, sorry, we're just not sending any money to Washington, D.C. anymore. We're not going to, you can't come in here and take citizens who won't pay, your Caesar's pinch of incense. We're not doing it. We're not letting you in. They're not going to do it. They're going to pay their federal tax dollars to our new country's capital, wherever that would happen to be. I don't know, Provo, Utah or something. Do you see something like that really developing down the road?
That is a very real possibility. I mean, people are getting fed up, and why should we be sending our tax dollars to a government that uses those tax dollars to replace us and to demonize us and to attack American values and Christian values? These things are not going away. They're not changing their ways. So drastic times call for drastic measures, and I'm praying every single day that this is a peaceful divorce, this is a peaceful separation, that no blood is shed. But I think the way to do that is by us building this parallel society. They want to provoke us into violence right now. They want to provoke us into taking some sort of illegal action. We have to not cater to that. We have to not want to give into that. What we need to do instead is build. We're not destroyers as Christians. We're builders. We're reformers. So what we need to do is build that parallel society. Start building businesses. Pull your kids out of the schools that are brainwashing them with satanic, anti-American propaganda and anti-Christian propaganda, and start taking back control of your own home and your own local community first, and then branch out from there. And inevitably, we will preserve the freedoms and the liberty that we cherish here.
When did all of this that you are expounding here, and there's a lot to agree with it, when did this sort of first start concretizing in your mind to say, wow, I see where this is going, and it's pretty clear that as we unfold events here, this is going to be the future?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small rural middle class area, Scranton, northeastern Pennsylvania. I'm an actual Scranton guy, unlike Joe Biden, who was here until he was about 7 years old and probably doesn't even remember the area. And then I moved out to Silicon Valley, and I got to live in several different cities throughout my 20s. I lived in, Philadelphia and San Francisco and Austin, Texas. And I got to see, both sides of the country, these two countries and these two different worlds, and I think in 2016, obviously, with the deep polarization of that campaign and what had followed over the next couple of years, it really started to click that, I don't think that there's a federal political solution here. I think the only solution is us, building our way out of this, because, the system that they have in place right now is inevitably going to turn to ash, because it's not built on the firm foundation of Christ like this country always was. And when you pull Christ out of the equation, anything you build on top of that house of sand is going to inevitably crumble. And I think we're seeing that with our country right now. But thankfully, we as Christians still have Christ as our rock to build upon. And we still have the wherewithal and the will and the motivation and the determination to build on that foundation and to ensure a future for our kids, that they have something to look forward to in this country, or in our states, or again in our own local communities.
Yeah, you have right now this sort of 48% to 48% division in the country, and then some people who can't seem to make up their minds, the remaining 4%, which tip it, depending on what election.
Right.
And that could be state elections or federal elections or whatever, and I think a perfect example of that is the U.S. Senate right now. It's 50-50.
Right.
And as we look at all of this, moving forward, what do you see as Gab's role here? Are you just kind of providing an opportunity for people to, chime in and talk about all of this, or are you helping lead the way to this future that you see?
Yeah, I'd like to think that God has blessed us with the ability to provide the infrastructure for people to communicate and to exchange information. One of the big reasons that Donald Trump won in 2016 is because he was able to cut through the media noise. By the way, on both the left and the right, we have these two separate, distinct ecosystems and echo chambers that both serve the oligarch agenda, right? Whether it's Fox News or on the right or CNN on the left, they're both serving the agenda of our overlords in one way or another. But Donald Trump was able to cut through that and speak directly to the people through the power of social media, and they're never going to allow something like that to ever happen ever again.
Right.
So that's why Gab is so important, is because we allow grassroots candidates to get their voice out there and to connect with voters and to connect with the people and really start an organic grassroots movement, because they have the ability to speak their mind and share their platforms without having to toe the line of big tech. So I think that's where our role is providing the infrastructure and helping to, not only on the political side, but also on the economic side as well. Like, we're building out a financial infrastructure as well with payment processing, with a marketplace, with advertising. All of that ties into, this concept of a parallel society that is, we're in the world, but we're not of the world.
Sure. Do you recall after the 2016 election, but before the inauguration of Donald Trump, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks after, sort of in the aftermath of the shock of the left, that, are you kidding me? He won, sort of thing.
Right.
Obama was giving an address. I believe it was to media of some sort, a convention or whatever, but I don't remember exactly what it was. But he was the one who sort of first brought up this whole, you got to do all this fact checking on social media, and he won because he was allowed to say whatever he wanted. And he really kind of, obviously they didn't expect him to win, but then when he won, it was this, oh my gosh, we screwed up kind of thing, and we got to make sure it never happens again. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Remember that happened?
Yep. Yeah. And that's when we saw terms like hate speech and misinformation and disinformation. And all of a sudden, all of these buzzwords just, came out of nowhere and became all the media could talk about. Is we have to stop misinformation. We have to stop disinformation. We have to stop hate speech. And of course, all of those things are anything that goes against the narrative of the oligarch regime. Bottom line, right? Anything that is America first, anything that is pro-Christ, forget it. That's disinformation. That's hate speech. So, these things, this is how they weaponize language. They weaponize language in a way where the term that they're using, they make it so that you almost can't be against it. Like, who would say, yeah, I'm pro hate speech, right? Right. So they design it that way. It's wizardry. It's really demonic what they're doing. They're manipulating people and deceiving people and using certain keywords and phrases that are almost uncompatible. Right. Like who would another good example is the Affordable Health Care Plan. Who would be against affordable health care? Right. So this is how they design their language and they weaponize language. And we have to be very acutely aware of this stuff. And I call this stuff out all the time. But, we can't play into their lexicon. We can't play into their language games. We have to say, no, this is the United States of America. Hate speech, disinformation, misinformation, none of those things exist. We have this thing called the First Amendment. We have this thing called free speech, which is hundreds of years in our tradition and in our value system. And we're not going to give that up because you lost an election.
Yeah, exactly. As I've been saying for years, the left is far better at coming up with bumper stickers than the right is. They always have great names for their legislation, like you just said, affordable health care. It's not pro-abort, it's pro-choice, because who's going to be opposed to choice? Well, apparently the left is now. If you say you don't want to get a vaccine, but that was then. This is now. Let's talk a little bit more about Gab also. Have you seen any particular increase because you started in 2016, kind of in the heat of that whole Trump and Clinton thing and all the cancellations and all that. Have you seen any hockey stick growth since Biden, I don't want to say won the election, but took office?
Yeah, this year was really our breakout year, especially when President Trump was banned, while he was still in office, by the way, from, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera. We really hockey sticked, January, February, March. Those were three of our biggest growth months in our 5-year history. And that has continued throughout this year. And what we're seeing now, very interestingly, is not only people on the right, not only conservatives, Trump supporters, which was like kind of our usual base of people that are being censored on other places and looking for a new home. We're also seeing people on the left and people that are apolitical who are anti-vax, or not even necessarily anti-vax, but they're questioning and hesitant to get this experimental vaccine, and they're finding out that they're now being censored, and they're finding out that even if they're a doctor, they're being censored and they're being shadow banned and they're being banned from these platforms. So those people are joining Gab in droves right now, especially the folks that are looking for ways to get an exemption. We have students joining. We have healthcare professionals joining. We have doctors joining. We have people that are employed that are looking for the exemption letters and templates that we put out. So we put out these templates for students and for people who are employed and for people in the military. And that went massively viral. And it was just a religious exemption template, citing Bible verses and citing different things, to make the case that, it's my sincere religious belief that I, do not want to inject this thing into my body. And that went massively viral. And we had the New York Times, we had CNN, we had Washington Post all attack me and call me a disinformation agent for reminding people that they have religious liberty and bodily autonomy in this country. So this is the wicked ways of the enemy. Is they don't want they really want to force this on people, and people are starting to wake up. Apolitical people on the left, people on the right. And we're seeing tremendous growth from that. And I expect that to continue into 2022, especially as the election cycle starts to heat up here.
Sure. How many people do you have on Gab right now, roughly?
Yeah, we have about 20 million people every month that are using our various services. So keep in mind, we have Gab Social, which is like our Facebook, Twitter alternative. We have Gab TV, which is our YouTube alternative. And we have a few different other services as well, like Gab Trends, which is our Drudge Report alternative. So between all these different products and services, we have about 20 million people that are using them each and every month. And it's really exciting to see that people are seeking out information that they can't get anywhere else, and that they know that when they come to Gab, they're not afraid of being shadow banned or being banned for having a wrong political opinion. And they almost don't know what to do with themselves when they first come in the door, because they're so used to kind of biting their tongue on these other platforms because they don't want to get thrown in Facebook jail or whatever. They come over here, and it's the sense of freedom in this new land, which is exactly what we're going for. And now we're working again on building this parallel economy and infrastructure and tools for this parallel economy. Gab Pay, which is our PayPal alternative, Gab Marketplace, which is going to be our Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace alternative. We have Gab Advertising now to connect businesses with consumers and consumers with businesses. So it's going really well, and I'm incredibly bullish on Gab for 2022 and beyond.
So you've got this sort of David Goliath thing going on. I mean, 20 million is a great number, but, Zuckerberg's sitting over there going, 20 million? Give me a break. And,
sure.
Dorsey and the whole bit and everything. So what is there a way that, and if this was a proprietary thing, then obviously, skip over it or gloss over it, but is there a way, or are there ways, because you're going to be ignored for a while, and then they're going to start trying to, undo you. Are there ways they can get to you and do what they did to Parler, for example?
No, thankfully they've already tried for the past 5 years, and we've been preparing for their attacks and have survived and thrived from their attacks and have become even more resilient. So, similar to what happened to Parler, we had that happen years ago, years before that happened to Parler. As we, back in 2018, we got, our hosting pulled out from under us. We've been banned from app stores. We're banned from PayPal. We're banned from Stripe. We're banned from the hosting providers. So we actually have our own physical servers. Actually, we just had to drop another $25,000 last week to buy more hard drives because because we're running out of space in one of our data centers. So, and this is extra work on our end. A lot of people don't know, what goes on behind the scenes just to keep Gab online. Most technology startups today, they can press a button, log into Amazon's AWS system, and press a button and get a bunch of servers instantly on demand. We don't have that luxury. We have to actually physically buy hardware, go install it, go set it up, go configure it, and then maintain it. And keep an eye on it 24/7 in order to keep the site online. But we've been doing that now for almost 2 years, and building out that infrastructure and investing heavily in that infrastructure, so that, because no one can turn off our own servers. Like there are servers, we own them. So the only one that's going to turn them off is us. We don't have Amazon over our shoulder, we don't have Apple over our shoulder, Google over our shoulder, and that's the result of us having the foresight and the vision to say, we can't be dependent on any of their infrastructure. We have to build our own infrastructure from scratch. And, hopefully in the future, we'll be able to offer that infrastructure to other people who are building as well.
Yeah, I want to add on to that just for our viewers' sake that without getting into any real detail, but we are doing the exact same thing here, recognizing the same danger and threat from the Goliaths of the world. We are doing anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Very smart.
Don't want to give him any ammo, but yes.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Gab advertising aspect for a moment, and then move on to the job board, if you could call it the job board, because we advertise with you guys, because we support everything that you're thinking about in terms of a plan and sort of, hey, this looks like what's happening here. So what exactly is the advertising component of Gab? How does it work?
Yeah, so right now we're in the very early stages. We're building a self-serve ad system where advertisers can come in and create and manage and monitor their ad campaigns on Gab. And the goal here is not, just to make more money, right? Like with Facebook's ads, it's like they just want to make as much money as possible off of user data. Our goal here is actually to build a parallel economy. So we're trying to get, small family-owned businesses, alternative media operations like you guys, anybody that fits into this parallel economy, this parallel society vision, people that share our values. We want to connect those people with the people on Gab who share their values, so that we can exchange value back and forth, between the community and between the businesses. And that's going phenomenally well. We're seeing incredible results. I know you guys have seen phenomenal results, and we're really, really excited because we really are seeing this parallel economy start to build. One of our advertisers, Dissonant Soaps, is a small family-owned, they're Christians, family-owned soap-making company, and they were getting 400, 500 orders a day, after advertising on Gab, and just, natural word of mouth was going after that and stuff, and people were all hyped up about it, and they actually had to expand their operation because of Gab ads. And it's like to see a small family-run operation be able to grow and thrive, using something like Gab ads and tapping into our community and connecting with customers who share their values. It's such a powerful thing, and that's why we're building it, and that's just one example of the many that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And God bless you for that, because some people are out there right now in a sort of a state of panic. I mean, there's dads and moms thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to put food on the table for my children. The great big whole Goliath evil empire is crushing, and so God bless you for being that far-sighted in that. Also, one of the things, if you're expanding, if your company and your advertising is working and you're expanding, that means you need workers, and you're actually in that. You got your fingers in that as well, don't you? Tell us about the job board.
Yeah, so what we were seeing is a lot of folks were, messaging me and posting on Gab saying, hey, I'm going to be forced to take this vaccine or lose my job, and I'm not doing it, so I need a job. So what we did is we used our group feature to create the Gab job board, and what we're seeing is business owners who are hiring, who are not requiring a vaccine, are posting, job opportunities in there, and people who are looking for a job are also posting their resumes in there. So we're able to connect people, and we have tens of thousands of people that join this group. And what we also found is that there are other, alternative technology entrepreneurs who are building real job boards. Like we use this feature that we have, which is Gab Groups. It's not necessarily an actual job board, but it has the tools to be able to connect people and have them communicate. But what we found is that there's actually entrepreneurs who are building actual job boards, and we were elevating them and connecting them with the people that are in those groups as well. So a lot of people are finding jobs in there, and a lot of people are finding people to hire in there as well, because there's a lot of employers who are hiring like crazy and have to offer these crazy incentives because they can't find anybody to hire. One of those incentives now is quickly becoming, we're not going to pry into your medical privacy, right? Like, God forbid, we have a standard thing that has been a part of employment in this country and business in this country for forever, is your employer's not going to pry into your healthcare privacy. Now, all of a sudden, that just does a 180, and everybody gets to know what you inject in your body and what you don't in your healthcare history. Right. So that's one of the things that we're seeing, and it's a great thing. I'm happy to help out people, and I know people are struggling right now, and it's very easy for people to get into this state of despair. But, we have to remember that Christ is king, and he's in control. And I firmly believe that God is using this time of trial right now to draw us closer to him.
Absolutely. Last final question for you, Andrew. Obviously, a business has to make a profit or at least break even. But, as you've said, the profit motive isn't your primary motive. You have to make money. You have to pay your bills. You have to be able to keep expanding. That's just the nature of business. That's the same thing here. We're a non-profit, and we like to think we put the non in non-profit, actually. But as you're looking down the road here, that changes to a degree how you do business compared to how a for-profit and all we want is just money, money, money business does profit. So if Planned Parenthood, for example, came to you and said, hey, Andrew, hey, Gab, here's $500 million, which, by the way, we got from the U.S. government. We'd like to spend that on Gab and put up all kinds of, slaughter your children in the womb ads. Would you take their advertising?
Absolutely not. That's the beauty is that, by the way, Planned Parenthood is welcome to create a Gab account, and they're welcome to express themselves on the site. We're not gauging political views. Now, they're probably going to get a lot of backlash from all the Christians and pro-life people on the site, but they're welcome to do so. But they are not entitled to run advertising on Gab. And we have every single ad that is going to be run on Gab is going to go through a human review. We're going to make sure that those ads line up with our values. We're not going to allow any adult content, casinos, anything that would go against our value system, we're not going to allow, because we have no obligation to allow people to pay us to promote things that go against our core values.
Good for you. Good for you. That's awesome. Any closing thoughts on how do people become Gab? They can't find it on apps, so where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, just go to gab.com. You just need an email address and a username, and you can sign up. It works a lot like Facebook, a lot like Twitter. If you're familiar with Facebook, you'll be able to use it really quickly. We have a lot of different groups across various different interests. We have a gardening group, a motorcycles group, a politics group, a group for Catholics, all sorts of different, interests. And that's the biggest thing is use the groups, go in there, post them, and connect with people who share your interests and share your values. That's the best way to utilize Gab, and speak freely, of course.
That's tremendous. Andrew Torba, the perhaps it's probably not too off base to say one of the most foresighted Americans in the country, because while this has all blown up in the last couple of years, you've been in this game for 5 years. So good for you for your foresight and all of your desire to at least provide some Americans, those who want it, with the safety they need to be able to continue their lives tyranny-free. Andrew, thanks for being with us. I appreciate it, man.
All the glory goes to God. Thank you.
Absolutely. God bless.
Thank you.
If it's news or current events and it has an impact on your eternal life or those of your loved ones, we are your resource. If you love what we do and you want to see us continue providing you with even more authentic Catholic news and content, we invite you to become a monthly donor by clicking on the link below and visiting churchmilitant.com today. Thank you in advance for helping us in whatever way that you are able. That's a wrap for this week's Mic'd Up. Be sure to share this information with everybody you know. This is one of our premium shows, so it's only available to you, our premium members. The world we're living in hates God. It promotes every intrinsic evil you can imagine. The only reasonable response for Christians is to fight against it and take joy in doing this, for our reward will be great in heaven. St. Augustine, in speaking of the two societies of human beings, one of which is predestined to reign with God for all eternity, the other doomed to undergo eternal punishment with the devil. So pray your rosary every day, live in a state of grace, evangelize, and fight. That's it for this week's Mic'd Up.
God love you.